Y'all know me, I love visual novels, I love science adventure, I love great art, so is it any wonder how I was allured by the siren song of Our World Has Ended? And yet despite this, upon completing it, God, how do I phrase this? It's, it's not what I expected, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. Cullen, go ahead and say hi to the good people.
Huh? What? We talking about Side AV? Because I kind of have a doctorate in that.
No, Our World Has Ended.
Oh, yeah, I played that.
You know, as a matter of fact, I played it too. P-Cube was kind enough to supply both of us with review copies of Our World Has Ended, but because our opinions on this game coincided a lot...
Not to mention, it makes editing a lot easier.
Anyways, we decided to tag team this review, so let's go ahead and talk about Our World Has Ended. Our World Has Ended follows a less than successful group of game developers called Judgment 7. Their current project is developing a revolutionary augmented reality game. Whilst experimenting with it, the whole team ends up trapped in a desolate VR version of their town. While there, they run into some of the characters from the company's past games, and then eventually they start running into other actual people that they don't know. There's clearly more to this VR world than they originally believed, so you spend most of the game trying to solve the mystery of what exactly this fake version of your town is, how it got there, why it's important, who all these people are. You know, it's the usual song and dance. And you go through it all playing as Reiji, Judgment 7's part-timer and designated normal guy / light novel protagonist.
Emphasis on the light novel protagonist part. I'm convinced there's an unmentioned piece of lore where Reiji will explode if he doesn't monologue about his friend's boobs every 10 lines. It's kinda like Speed, but the bus is Reiji's dick. When Reiji isn't being a huge perv,
which, let's be real, is almost always,
he's branching the plot with everyone's favorite VN staple, the dialogue choice. While most of them are straightforward, occasionally the game mixes things up with the timed selection of soul system. And yeah, technically all this does is add a visual flair to the typical VN dialogue choice, but making these segments time puts you in the shoes of someone having to make a split decision. The results are mixed, since sometimes you'll make a decision you probably wouldn't have wanted to. Which, hey, my social anxiety says big mood, but I really don't like that it's at the cost of progression.
Great for immersion, but not so much for practicality. Your choices all give you affinity points towards certain members of Judgment 7 based on those choices, and depending on whoever has the most points after reaching a certain point, their route is the one you'll be locked into.
Sounds standard, but the one reason I find it worth mentioning is because of how it's implemented in the game's UI. Props to Red for this quality of life mechanic, since at any point the player can go to the menu and see the top 3 characters that like Reiji the most. It makes it easy on repeat playthroughs to cater your dialogue choices to getting into certain characters' roots. Speaking of the user interface, Red really brought their A game. In a world where every visual novel without a semicolon in the title lacks in creativity when it comes to this, it's refreshing to see one of these games actually try. You could argue that it's all a bit busy, and I'm inclined to agree, but compared to its bare-bone contemporaries, I'll take this over nothing.
I also want to give praise to the art direction in this game. The artist did a great job here, making characters that feel realistic but vibrant. The color palette is fantastic, it's stylish, and it's honestly one of the most memorable art styles I've seen in quite some time.
Oh, and did I mention Aoi takes part in my favorite VN design choice? That's right, baby, I'm talking emulating real-life tech! Forum posts, cell phones, computers, VR.
Cullen.
Every game needs to do this.
Hey, Cullen, I think you're,
It's my biggest mood and knocks immersion out of the park every time I see it done. Take note of this, VN devs, because this is some good shit.
Cullen! Hey, bring it back. We're getting off topic.
Oh, well, besides noting that all the voice work is pretty solid, the only thing else to bring up presentation-wise would be the translation.
Full disclosure, we're both pals with Andrew Hodgson, aka Steiner, aka the guy who translated this. Cullen especially so.
We learned about this game's existence because he told us he worked on it, and this is one of the reasons we are excited to give it a shot. Given that we've expressed our fair share of issues with Our World Has Ended so far, I think we've made it clear that there's no bias here, but hey, transparency is important. Having said that, I truly think that Steiner's translation work is the best part of this game. All of the dialogue flows together wonderfully and brings up the experience significantly. You might consider that a weird thing to bring up, but the quality of a visual novel's translation is really important since you spend all of your time looking at text. There's a lot of care put into the dialogue to bring out the character's personality, for better and for worse. A visual novel could have the best story ever, but if the cast of characters that take us through that story are uninteresting, then what's the point? Alternatively, a great cast of characters can make even the worst stories enthralling, and I'd say the cast of Aoi is more of the latter than the former, with a few exceptions.
4 out of 7 of them are fine. As a matter of fact, one of them, Iruka here, is excellent. He is the real comedic relief of this game. He's got 5-star fashion sense, and I love him. His fashion sense is as extra as him. Really, it's amazing.
He's also voiced by the same voice actor that voices the SciTV best boy.
But then there are these 3. Reiji, well, I mean, God, he's just a bland protagonist whose only discerning feature is that he really likes to talk about boobs. But of course, his love of boobs pales in comparison to that of Sekai, who almost single-handedly makes this game. Oh God, I cannot believe I'm actually about to say this. He makes this game annoyingly horny. But what do I mean by this? I mean, he frequently derails the tone of a scene with an out-of-place sexual innuendo. Like, really, this happens so often. The plot's getting interesting, the suspense is insane, and just when you've allowed yourself to get swept up in what's going on, bam! Like clockwork, every time. Sekai's there, ready to be that guy in your middle school class who just figured out that you can put the word boobs in a calculator, and he thinks that this is the discovery of a lifetime, and now he's ready to tell the world every 5 minutes.
Overall, I would say that despite a couple bad apples, Judgment 7 plays off each other rather well comedically. And while we're on the topic of characters, let's talk writing. The story is kinda good. It's good at times. In fact, there are times where, dare I say, it's great. In the middle of the game in particular, and trust me, I'm not going to spoil anything, so I'm going to keep it vague, the game does a really good job of building anticipation, and there's some great scenes in there. But between all these great scenes, there's a lot of...
幼女に罵られるのも勝ってもらえて何よりだよ。実は焼きそばという極上のベッドに白飯を絶対不可侵の結界か。望むところではないか。
Yeah, there's a lot of that. It should go without saying that a game being horny isn't inherently a flaw, especially in visual novels where it's considerably more common than in other genres. However, you know that picture of the girl who's trying to eat the pancakes, but she looks really distressed because she's being given too many pancakes? Yeah, that's kinda how Aoi feels thanks to Sekai. At the beginning of the game, it's not so bad, but then as the game progresses and you see that it never turns itself down, that it's always gonna be keeping its horny level at an 11 out of 5, that it's always gonna be giving you boob joke after innuendo after boob joke after innuendo, it gets annoying. Especially because a lot of the time, these comments feel unnecessary, they feel out of place, they feel creepy, they're occasionally directed toward a literal child, and they kill any semblance of a serious mood this game tries to have at some points. And this game does try to be serious at times, but God, it just can't figure out what kind of a tone it wants to have.
I describe the game best as insecure. When the game's plot really gets going, it's easy to get into, but the characters are quick to kill the momentum. It's like the writers thought the plot couldn't be held up on its own merits, so they decided to fill the void with endless sexual innuendos.
But hey, if you have the patience of a god, this might not be an issue for you. I'm somewhat hesitant to call this a complaint because of that. But somewhat tangentially, you want to know what is a big complaint we have about this game? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and by elephant in the room, we mean the pedophile in the room, because this character right here, Asano, she's a pedophile.
Actually, the term is shotokan, and it's a very normal part of Japanese fiction.
Yeah, sure, whatever, buddy. But she literally admits it. We're not exaggerating, and the game tries to play it off like it's just her being quirky and cute, but it's not. It's so creepy, and the cast treats it like this is no big deal, and the normalization of this is honestly pretty gross. This game just doesn't know where to draw the line, and that's a serious problem.
There is no real reason for a game originally released in 2017 to slip up on this so hard. It's unnecessary as hell, and her creepiness is always present. She's the biggest problem with the game, and let it be known that neither of us are prudes. It's just that big of a problem. To say it makes playing this game uncomfortable is an understatement.
It's really hard to score a game like this, so honestly, we aren't going to. We both agree that this is basically an impossible game to rate because you're gonna get a really different impression of it depending on who you are. If our critiques made you feel uncomfortable, this game is not for you.
But if you made it through this entire review and said, I don't see the big deal, then you'll probably like it a lot. In our opinion, the story had a lot of potential, but is bogged down by the sheer amount of innuendo and creepy subject matter, both of which feel pretty unnecessary more times than not.
You know, if they toned it down just a bit, it would have led to a much better product, so god, it's really unfortunate. As a matter of fact, to quote the game, this is saddening. Hey, since you made it this far, don't forget to check out Cullen's channel. Seriously, he makes fantastic reviews. As a matter of fact, he just made one about Persona Q2, and it honestly sold me on the game, so don't forget to check that out.